Hey Pop Tarts, welcome back to another video on my channel here for Self-Love September. Self-Love September is a personal project that I like to do every single year where I challenge myself to put out thought-provoking and helpful content to you guys so that I can check in with where you are on your self-love journey and hopefully provide something that is useful to you on your self-love journey, and also so I can check in with where I am and let you guys know where I am with self-love and what I've been thinking about as well. And every year I have new interests and new things come along that I've been thinking about over the previous 12 months. This is the 7th Self-Love September that I'm doing, and I'm hoping that you are really enjoying the resources I'm putting out so far. Today I want to talk about something important AF. I want to talk about money. I want to talk about being on a low income, being in a tight spot with money, struggling with money all the time, and how that relates to self-love, how that connects with self-love, and the issues that arise for people that are struggling financially, who want to practice self-love on a regular basis. I want to thank the person who gave me the idea to do this. I did ask, I think on Facebook, or was it on YouTube, or maybe it was both, I'm not sure, but I asked people when I was doing the planning for Self-Love September back in July and August kind of time, what would people like to see? And of course I got a lot of requests about things that have been done before, and I directed quite a few people to videos that I've done in previous years, but some of the suggestions were things I have not tackled before, or things that I definitely think I need to tackle in more depth. And somebody asked me, can you do a video about self-love and what to do when you are in poverty, when you are on low income, no income, and you want to practice self-love, but you kind of feel like that is obviously a massive extra obstacle for you. And I thought that's something that we haven't talked about so far. It's something that's definitely played on my mind before, something I've definitely thought about. So thank you so much to the person who suggested that. And these are my thoughts. These are certainly not the entirety of my different thoughts. And I do think, as always, that the comments section would be a really good place to have further discussion and for you guys to lend your perspectives. But I want to give some insight into how I feel and where I'm coming from with this, and hopefully we can open up, as I said, the discussion as well when the video's over, guys. I ingest a lot of different self-love and self-care resources. I have listened to podcasts, I read a lot of articles, you know, that kind of thing. I'm very interested in how different people present the importance of self-love and self-care, and how we actually take that from the mentality to the action. So I've seen a lot of different resources, and I will say that the resources that I come across are often exclusionary in a number of ways. But the way that we're speaking about today is, you know, exclusionary of people who are on a low income, who have a very tight budget, who are struggling with financial issues. Certainly there is a lot of exclusion in that area of things. And I want to talk a little bit about the things that I've seen, how we can make sure that we're spotting them, which I think is one of the important things, and also what can we do to make any kind of notable change when it comes to this kind of exclusion. Sometimes I click on an article and it's got a bunch of different suggestions for things that you can do to have a really good self-love routine, and I read through the suggestions and I notice that, you know, it's like 2 out of 10 of them, or 10 out of 30 of them, or whatever, a very small amount of them are things that you could do with little to no money. If you are someone who is on a tight budget, someone who has financial concerns right now, and you read through a list of things, or you listen to a podcast, or you watch a video and there's a list of suggested things, and you recognize that there is very little to none of them that you can actually do because they're not financially possible, I really want to encourage you to first of all recognize that this does not mean that you are shut out of having a self-love routine, practicing self-care. It only means that the person who produced that content has been very short-sighted in the way that they've approached things, and they have not taken themselves out of their personal position in life and placed themselves into the position of someone like you, who might not be able to afford extra childcare, or a therapist, or, you know, a subscription to a personal chef service, or whatever. So the things that that person has listed are not indicative of your ability to practice self-love and to bring self-love more into your actual action plan every day. They are only indicative of the producer of that content, unfortunately, having a very, very you know, short-sighted moment where they could not see outside the realms of their own position. They had the blinkers on, and they were very much thinking in terms of what has helped them, or what has helped people that they know who are only in their socioeconomic sphere. It's not because of you. It doesn't mean that you can't gain access to a more self-loving existence. It doesn't mean that you can't do things to really vastly improve your life in that regard. I really want to put that across, because I know that when people come across resources like this, it really can be a bit of a punch in the face. It feels like a smack in the face to read through a list of suggestions and find that, you know, you don't get to do any of those things. You can't afford currently any of those things. You do not have access to those things. And it can really make you feel so low when you get to the end of an article or the end of a podcast and you realize that the things that are being suggested are not things that you can actually go for. You can't afford a gym membership, you can't afford, you know, whatever thing it is. Just try to recognize that it is the person that's produced that is the person with the issue. They probably shouldn't be speaking to what you should do to be self-loving or what you can do to practice self-care if their mentality is that you need money to be able to achieve it, or if their mentality is that everybody must have the money to achieve it because everybody they know has the money to achieve it. That person probably shouldn't be finding themselves in a position where they're placing themselves as an expert or a speaker on self-love, really, because it's just such a narrow way to approach the topic. Another thing that I think we can definitely start to be more aware of is when self-love resources actually just contain a hell of a lot of product placement. And that's something that we can certainly not only recognize, but also call out. So if you open a magazine, for example, and you see that there is an article that's all about things that you can do to be more self-loving and bring self-love more into your life, and then you turn to the big list of things and you will see that there are certain highlighted products in there. I've seen this lots of times with lists of things. So you'll have maybe one or two things like, meditate or take more naps or whatever, drink more water. But then you will have the majority of the points will be things that are tied to a product. So it will say something like join an online gym class, and then it will in bold. If it's on the internet, certainly they'll hyperlink it. And that means that the company have paid for that product placement. That means that there is a deal going on between that publication and a company or an individual. And in magazines, I've seen it too, where they will put in brackets the shop that you can get it from and the price that it is, right? And again, it's in bold. It's kind of obvious that these are certain products that have paid for that placement. I feel that there is certainly a way to place a product in the context of talking about self-love or self-care. There's a right way and a not so great way of doing it, I think. So for example, I have seen YouTube videos where a YouTuber has been paid to promote a product, and the product is something that they want to place into their self-love routine. And so they have made a video about their self-love routine and suggested a number of different things. And at some point they have spoken about the product that they are being paid to promote. But when I've watched the video, I haven't gotten a bad taste in my mouth personally, because they've been upfront from the beginning. They've got ad written in the title of the video. They've said what it's all about at the beginning. They've said, like, there's a product in here that I'm going to be mentioning in the context of a wider video about my self-love journey. And I have legitimately thought that the video is helpful or would be helpful to someone who's right at the beginning of their self-love journey. And so I have not felt too sore about that at all. I mean, look, influencers, that's how they make their money, through advertising products. And a lot of influencers do only choose products that they believe in and that are ethically made, and they have to do something they have to create the piece that they're going to put the product placement in. That's only from my perspective, and I will definitely feel negative about certain things that you might not feel negative about, or vice versa. But I do think that there are some times, a lot of times actually, where self-love resources are made, and I look at the amount of products in there, the amount of hyperlinks, the amount of suggestions for things that you can do, and then there's the shop listed and the name of the item, and I just think, this is a fluff piece that is designed to just directly send you to items by convincing you that you need these items in order to create a self-love routine. And there's really not that much else to it. There's not that much care put into it. I really feel like it's just commodified self-love, where certain companies are paying for products to be placed, and the magazine or the website thought, oh, the best thing to do here is to do a self-love list. We can get all these products in. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with calling this out. And by calling out, again, I'm not talking about being vicious to the person that wrote it. I'm talking about being honest and giving an honest critique. And I would love to know in the comments what you guys think about this specifically, because I know there's going to be different points of view on this, definitely. But to me, I really feel like if a self-love resource is made, and every single point, or the majority of the points in it about things that you can do, are telling you to go and buy something or upgrade something or join something, then I think that that can be harmful, and I think it can be exclusionary. And I don't think self-love should be exclusionary. I don't think the dialogue around it should be exclusionary. I don't think that the implementation should be something that people are convinced they can only do if they are thin, or they can only do if they are able-bodied, or they can only do if they are affluent. So I think wherever we see this, it's okay to write to the magazine, write to the website, go in the comments section and say, you can even say what you liked about it. Do the compliment sandwich thing. I love the compliment sandwich. Maybe it's because I'm English, but the compliment sandwich is good, where you say, hey, I liked these things about this. These are the critiques that I had. And, this was good too. or whatever. Sandwich the critique between some compliments if you really feel like you don't want to go down an avenue of being overly, I don't know, if you feel it's aggressive in your wording to just go straight into the critique, then you don't have to do that. But there is nothing wrong with highlighting where something has been really overall in the main exclusionary. I think it's a really good thing to actually highlight that, and it makes you into a self-love pioneer, someone who wants to make sure everybody can join the self-love club and get something out of this dialogue that we're having. And if you want to know more about being a self-love pioneer, I will leave a video down below from my previous Self-Love September. It was last year's Self-Love September project, where I talk about how to be a self-love pioneer, how to start the conversation amongst your friends and loved ones, and that kind of thing. So I'll leave that down there too. Don't be afraid to approach the person who created the content to let them know that you feel that it's a very narrow list of suggestions that they've given. I really think that is something that we don't probably do enough. And I'm not suggesting that you absolutely, rip it out of this person and try to really hurt this person and get personal with them. I'm not even suggesting that you share your personal story with them, but I would suggest that if somebody's putting something like that out into the world to be consumed by an audience and to be seen by the public, there would be nothing wrong with sending that person a critique, explaining how that piece of content can be potentially damaging and it is very narrow. There are always going to be some creators, I think, that will not take that on board. They will get defensive, they might get snotty, they might block you, or they might just not reply to what you said. But I think there are lots of creators out there who appreciate that when they make something like that, it's okay for the audience, for the reader or the watcher or the listener to critique it and to say, hey, these were the issues I had with what you produced. This is why it's not necessarily helpful. These are the problems with it. I know that for some people it's really scary to do that. So I'm not suggesting that everybody takes that route. If you feel like you can't take that route, that's fine. But there is nothing wrong with sending a constructive critique of something to a person that has produced it, presumably because they want to be helpful in some way. I think that for me, it's been really interesting to receive some of the critiques that I have received about things that I've said in my videos. I've also received critiques for things that I've put on Facebook, memes that I've posted, that somebody felt were, quite sort of exclusionary or didn't consider a certain point of view. I certainly have not agreed with every single critique that I have that's been passed my way. And I've certainly wrote emails back to people and said, look, I'm glad that you sent me this critique. Thank you so much for coming to me with it. But these are the reasons why I think maybe you didn't get where I was coming from. And maybe we can find sort of a middle ground where I try to understand how something has been harmful, but you also maybe understand how it's harmful that I'm not allowed to have my point of view on something, or whatever. So it's not like I'm not saying I just roll over every time and go, oh, okay, somebody didn't like what I wrote or what I presented, so that must mean that I have to never think like that, feel like that, or present that again. But I do know that I'm in a position of responsibility making content and having an audience around my work. I am. And I'm in a position where sometimes I will be asked to view something in a different way and understand how I can improve and how I can do better. And, what I would say is, my advice would be, try not to tell yourself that all creators of content like this are not open to critique and they're not going to listen to what you have to say. I think, sure, it's important to present it maybe in a certain way if you really want it to be listened to or read and taken on. Obviously, we can't go in all guns blazing sometimes, because that sometimes makes a person shut down. But I think, look, if you've got legit critiques to make about something that you felt excluded by, especially a big list of things you have to pay for to practice self-love, that can be very harmful to people who can't afford those things, then I think it's worthwhile saying something. Because if that content creator, if that journalist or that video maker, that podcaster, that author maybe even, if that person really is doing what they're doing from a place of genuinely wanting to help, your comment, your email, your critique that you send to them could be the thing that makes them think differently. It could be the thing that they needed, because nobody has yet shown them that, like, oh, okay, I was excluding poor people. I was excluding, working class people. I was excluding people who don't have a lot of extra cash. And I wasn't thinking about them when I made this resource. And thank God this person came to me and said as much, So I just think it's a bit like that. You definitely can make an effort to critique something if you feel like that's something you can do. And if you feel like you want to put that point across, it could be that a content creator will take that on board. I certainly have taken certain critiques on board, for sure. Another thing that I want to say about products that I've been thinking about that I'd like to get into this video is that I think on top of the harmful nature of resources that try to link self-love to buying things, there's also the issue of being on a low income and having financial problems, sometimes meaning that obviously you feel you're in scarcity mindset a lot of the time, you're in survival mode a lot of the time, and you already feel excluded from a lot of the things that people do for fun, a lot of the interests that people have that you feel like you can't buy into. And that sometimes creates a sense that you do want to sometimes buy things to give you a temporary lift, a temporary high, and it sort of temporarily can help you to forget the issues that you do have with finances. And of course that's totally understandable, but I also think that it's something that we can stand to look at if we are on a really sort of difficult, tight income. And I'm coming here from a place of having been on a very low income myself in the past, having suffered with chronic pain on and off for a few years back there, not being able to work, and also being restricted from access to my benefits. So a couple of times having my benefits cut off because I didn't send a doctor's note in time, or I couldn't get a doctor's appointment in time. I mean, it was a nightmare. I was close to the line. I was as poor as you can be without being homeless. I really just could not afford food sometimes. And I recognized within myself at that point in my reality, a tendency to sometimes make a hedonistic purchase with what money I did have. And I got a temporary lift from that. I got a high from it. And the times where I talked myself out of doing that were actually really great for me. Sorry, darlings, I've been talking, gas bagging all weekend, and now I've got a bit of a wobbly voice. The times where I made the decision for myself not to enter into that mentality, not to enter into that, it's not even a mentality, because to be honest with you, studies have shown that when you're on a really tight income and you've got financial issues, your decision making ability is impaired and your long-term planning is impaired. So both of those things are an issue too for people that are struggling with money concerns. So it's not always a sort of decision that I made from a very conscious place. Sometimes it was just this energy that overtook me that made me feel like I have to buy something frivolous that is not needed, that is usually something that would be bought by somebody who has the excess income for that thing. And whenever I managed to resist doing that, I did feel good about it, and it gave me a longer term feeling of positivity. It gave me a longer term feeling of stability. So I recognized that I was going for that temporary high sometimes, and it was leaving me actually more financially unstable. And I think that's actually one of the insidious things as well about these resources and these lists that I was mentioning before, that have, big suggestions of things you can buy, lots of suggestions for things you can buy. It's particularly insidious because if you're in a position where you don't have access to excess income, you may be also in a position where you're overtaken by this desire to do something, let's say, irresponsible with your money that will leave you in a worse financial position in the long term. But actually it gives you that temporary lift. It sort of temporarily frees you from this feeling that you have of this financial reality that's bearing down on you. So that's another reason why I think the lists have got to be called out, just to go back to that for a second. But yeah, I definitely had these feelings that I wanted to purchase something frivolous, something that was unnecessary, something that would make me feel temporarily affluent, with the long-term result of being actually less financially stable and having less money to put into things that would fulfill that baseline of my hierarchy of needs, right? So paying the bills, paying my rent, buying food, that kind of thing. I am so not about shaming people for making frivolous or unnecessary purchases when they are struggling with money. I totally understand where that comes from, where that desire comes from, and where that behavior comes from. I'm speaking from a place of experience though when I say that when I caught myself in the act a few times and I really started to change that behavior, it really worked wonders for me, and it made me feel positive in that longer term way. So that's why I wanted to bring that up. And I think every single day is different. Every time where you have the opportunity to make a decision about how you spend your money is different. So sometimes you're going to have certain days where you feel like it's a real win for you and you kept some money back that you could have spent on something that you didn't need and was only going to give you that temporary high before you sort of crash down to earth again with less money than you had before you purchased the thing. I think sometimes we win and sometimes we're not so lucky, but it's just about keeping that in mind, recognizing that, and recognizing that, when you hand your money over for something that wasn't as necessary by half as what you might need it for, then you know, you're going to be so personally harmed by that. The company that you give that money to, they are not thinking of you. They do not care about your position. They care only about their bottom line. So you have to care about you. You have to think about where you need your money to go. And whenever you resist a temptation to purchase something that you know is going to leave you more financially wobbly, please give yourself credit, congratulate yourself for making that decision. It is no small thing that you've made the decision in your own favor. You've done something that is good for you, that is helpful to you. If you are about to buy something that you feel is connected to self-love or self-care, definitely ask yourself if you've already got something like it that you don't use, that you can pull out and start to use. Do you have something within your collection of possessions that already speaks to the need that you feel like you want to purchase a product to meet, basically? Definitely think about that, because I know there have been times where I've gone to buy something, I've added it to cart, or I've picked it up in a shop, and then I've thought, you know what, I've actually got something like this in the bottom drawer. I've actually got a scented candle. I've actually got a particular book that speaks to this issue, or I know a friend who's got a book that speaks to this issue and I can borrow it, or I can go to the library and I can loan out a book on this. I don't need to buy it. And then a lot of the times that would directly link me in to that feeling that I've had quite often of not being particularly financially affluent, being in a bad way with money, and feeling like I needed to feel affluent in that moment by purchasing something unnecessary. So definitely think, have I already got something like this, or do I know someone who's got something like this, so I can at least try it out first before I buy, or borrow it from them, depending on what it is. So definitely think about that. Definitely also think about delaying paying for something for your self-love journey if you are in a particularly difficult mood, if there's a lot going on in your life and you feel like you might be purchasing it as a kind of comfort thing. And maybe speak to someone who does have access to that thing that you might want to buy and ask them what they get out of it. Get some reviews, read some reviews online about the product or service you're about to buy. That's also an important thing when we are dealing with having a very limited amount of money, is that we definitely can look at reviews and look at things people have said about the app that we might want to buy for self-love, or the book that we might want to buy for self-love, or whatever it is. Have a look at the reviews, take a while to enjoy the process of assessing what you're going to buy before buying it, and come from this place of having all of the information and feeling really like this is definitely the purchase that you want to make before you go ahead and make it. Of course, the other thing I think we have to ask ourselves when we're on really limited funds is, have all of our basic needs been met before we buy something for our self-love journey? I think that meeting your basic needs is one of the most self-loving things you can do with your limited budget. So if you know that you have not put food in the cupboards yet, or there's a bill that does need to be paid, there's something that you need to do for your immediate security, your immediate safety, and your, immediate sustenance, then make sure that those things are done first. And I know that it's not as exciting, it's not as fizzy, it's not as glamorous, and I've sort of already said that I've definitely been in that position of making a hedonistic choice for that temporary high. But I think that long term, that's the thing, once you do it a couple of times, you realize, oh, you know what, I really actually like this feeling of making sure that my needs are met, my actual needs are met, before going on to buy something, or before making the decision of whether or not to buy something. It doesn't feel extra fizzy in that moment where I would like to have that fizz, but later on, when I actually look at my bank balance, when I actually recognize that I have saved the money for the things that do need to get done and would make me feel more secure when I go to bed at night, when my head hits the pillow and I think, okay, I've done that for myself, I've taken that responsibility, I've put the money where it needed to go. That longer term feeling of security and safety is far more beneficial to your self-love journey. I want to talk about a few things now that you can do if you are on low income. I want to go through a list that I've created of some things that you can do that do not require a great deal of money at all, or are basically free. And I'm going to sort of talk a little bit about each of them. And this would be the point at which I would also say that if you are watching this and you are not on a low income, and you are actually quite financially comfortable, and you do have excess income for things, then first of all, props to you, because you are wanting to get a grip on something that you don't actually directly experience yourself. And I think that's really awesome. I think that's something that is so important and can't be overstated. If you are in a comfortable position, but you want to understand what it's like for people that aren't, or what people that aren't can be doing to be self-loving, then I think that shows that you want to keep an open mind to the fact that different people have different kinds of livelihoods, different kinds of financial situations, and that means you're not going to be part of the problem of maybe suggesting to people things that they can do that require a lot of money, or assuming that somebody can do something that you can do for your self-love in their situation without thinking about how their situation is so very different to your situation. The other thing I want to say to you, if you're financially secure, is that you also can definitely absorb the things that I'm going to list out to you now. You can use this list for yourself too, because even if you are financially affluent, financially stable, and you've got that excess income, you may find that you are going through the same thing that I just previously mentioned in this video, where you do buy things for that temporary lift, that temporary high. And when it comes to self-love, you might have convinced yourself that self-love is buying things, self-love is consumerism. And even if you are in a place where buying those things doesn't actually affect you financially, it's not having a damaging effect on your bank balance, you may find that it's having a damaging effect on you psycho-spiritually. So if that's you and you recognize, okay, well, I'm not on a low income, but actually I am finding that I'm often buying things for my self-love journey rather than thinking about things I can do that don't cost anything, then this list is also for you. So please also partake of this list, and I will leave the list down below as well so you guys can access it easily. The first thing I want to suggest is to organize your space, organize your home, organize your room, wherever it is that you are staying, organize it. If you are on the move, if you do not have a fixed address, organize the bag that you move from place to place. Make sure you've got everything where you want to have it. Make sure that anything that you don't use anymore is put somewhere else, or recycled, or taken out of your bag. If it's just like weighing you down and you do not use it anymore, give it away, give it to charity, give it to somebody else who might need it. Make sure that you're not carrying around anything or are in possession of anything that is actually emotionally not that great for you, something that you're hanging on to that always reminds you of something sad. I mean, put it away if you don't want to completely get rid of it, but make sure that it's out of sight so that you don't access those emotions and those memories every time you look at it. Get stuff decluttered. Put things in the spaces that you want them to be in. I want to add to this point by saying that you can also not organise your space and not declutter. I am aware that there is a great deal of advice online and elsewhere about decluttering and how it relates to self-care and self-love and having a clear mind and all of that. And so I'm aware that it's quite overdone. And sometimes I think it can be a bit of a headache and a bit of a minefield to be reading through different tips, taking on different resources, and constantly reading, declutter your space, get organized, get tidy, get rid of stuff you don't need, blah, blah, blah. So I think equally in the other direction, we could say, don't do that. Say fuck it to that. Don't bother with it. If it's making you feel stressed out and you're feeling like you don't want to do it, you can just do a part of it that you feel is necessary, but don't put pressure on yourself to do the rest. If you feel like that is a message that is coming up that is just really bothersome to you and putting you in even more of a crappy spot, don't do it. Rebel against that advice. Fuck it off, I don't think it's something that we need to do every single time we have our place in a shambles. I think sometimes people do operate well in chaos. Sometimes things do need to be in a bit of a shambles before we decide to put everything at right angles again. Shambles before right angles, baby cakes. So sometimes it's like that. Every individual is different. Not everybody needs to have this well organized space where everything is where they know it is and where they want it and where it's easily accessible. Not everybody can do that anyway. Some people share space with others and things do get mixed up. And God, all the flies in my video this year. What is going on? It's like flies have just got this desire to be part of this self-love dialogue. Anyway, yeah, organise or don't organise, whatever takes your fancy. So that's the first thing I wrote down. I also wrote down spend more time outside. This is not something that is going to resonate with everybody. And I will say for the record that I never would say that a complete list of self-love activities or resources should appeal to everybody. It's not possible. It's not possible that you can create a list of activities or suggestions that is going to be inclusive of everybody. I do think that it's better if the resource actually says something like, you might not be able to do this, so you could do something like it, or you could just skip this one, because it shows that the person creating that resource has thought about the fact that some people might not be able to engage in some things. So for instance, right now I'm saying spend more time outside. It costs nothing to do that. It gets you in a different headspace. You can fill your lungs up with air. It just, makes you feel like you're in a happier place. Sometimes it just switches you out of whatever crap was going on and you feel like you've got a bit of a reset. Like right now I'm suggesting spending more time outside. It's free. It usually puts you in a great different headspace. It inspires you. But I'm also saying this might not be something that you can do. And it might not be something that you feel safe to do or want to do. So I'm taking into account people that might be at present housebound for one reason or another, or unable to venture outside for one reason or another outside of their home. So I think it's better if resources address the fact that not everything on the list of suggestions is going to include everybody. So I definitely don't think my list is inclusive of everybody, of course. But for a lot of people that are wondering about things they can do that cost no money, spending more time outside might be something that they haven't thought of for a while, just needed a quick reminder of how positive that can be and how it puts a different spin on your day. Suggestion number 3, reduce the amount of time you spend on social media, or switch up what you are doing with your social media. So you can actually choose to spend less time looking at social media because you recognize that there are other things you'd rather do with your time. You want to enrich your brain in a different way. Social media has become harmful for one reason or another, or you can choose to change things up. So stop following accounts that make you feel crappy. Start following more accounts that inspire you or make you think differently, or that are self-love oriented accounts that you feel are inclusive of you and your journey. Start thinking about how you want to use social media differently to express yourself as well, and think about how you can be self-loving in that regard. So it's changing your relationship with social media in some way. Try writing down your thoughts and feelings. If you don't journal, you might want to start journaling. If you do journal, but you feel like your practice is a bit stagnant, maybe pick it up, or maybe start writing in a different way. You could write poetry, you could write lists of things that you're looking forward to, or that you want to change, or that you're happy that happened for the day, or whatever. You can do gratitude journaling. I do a few different types of journaling. I do spiritual journaling, I do gratitude journaling. The books that I buy are not necessarily expensive, and I do also use the notes on my phone. If you're in possession of a phone with a notes section, you can always just use that to type things down and to start to record and collect your thoughts and feelings. And often that can be a way to just like take some pressure off or exercise whatever is internal when you are going through difficulties with finances and you feel like you need that outlet. Try meditation and guided visualization. There are so many free meditations, guided visualizations, and good meditation music that you can access on YouTube. And I know that you have access to YouTube because you're watching this right now. So that's definitely one that you can do for your self-love journey. If you are into meditation, or if you don't know if you're into meditation and visualization, now might be the time to find out. Assess your sleeping pattern and figure out if something needs to change with it. Do you sleep enough hours a night? Are there any reasons why you might have crappy sleep or less sleep than you need? Are there bad habits that you've got in place that cause you to not be able to sleep as much as you need to? Is there something that needs to be adjusted there? A lot of people do think they can run on a lot less sleep than they actually need, and sometimes they don't realize that that's part of what might be making them feel crappy or run down. Try to explore different ways of making sure that you do have a healthy sleep pattern. There's lots of good advice out there. So if that's something that you haven't checked in on in a while, and you think that it could be leading to certain issues with how you're feeling, how your body's feeling and stuff like that, it might be good to just assess it, check in, decide if you are sleeping enough. And one thing that I would say, if you feel like you're not sleeping enough and you definitely stay up way after you should do, or you don't get enough hours sleep in the average week, is to practice a digital ban when you are about to go to sleep. So for about an hour before you go to sleep, no phone, no tablet, no laptop, no looking at electronics, no looking at screens, basically. Try to read a book or just like relax and breathe deeply, count sheep, whatever, so that you are sort of not, your brain isn't active and your eyes aren't wide open from looking at the screen before you go to bed. Joyful movement in your body, whatever that means for you, whatever that looks like for you. You do not have to necessarily see it as working out if working out doesn't appeal to you. You can definitely just see it as whatever you feel is healthy and comfortable and safe for you. You might just want to do a bit of light stretching in the morning. You might want to make sure that you take yourself for a walk if it's been a while since you've done that. You know, you can do all kinds of different things that you feel put you in touch with your body and help you to feel connected to your body. And the other thing that I want to say in relation to this point is, don't move your body if you don't want to as well. I'm aware that the whole self-love dialogue is definitely oversaturated with a lot of fitness and movement type of advice, and I don't think that's a bad thing at all, but I think it can definitely get a little bit like, okay, we've heard that, I know that kind of thing, and everybody's on their own journey with it. And I think sometimes it can be, I know that, I know about that, it's not something I feel comfortable with right now, or it's something that I want to take a break from at the moment, or I don't like the way it's being framed. And you know what, if those kinds of suggestions do not fit with you and you feel like it's actually causing you to have a deficit of self-love, to think about joyful movement or exercise or whatever, then don't take that advice. Do not feel that you have to pressure yourself to put that into your routine if you don't want to. Number 8 on the list, do what you've been avoiding. Do what you have been avoiding. This is a big one. This is one that I think can be very difficult, and depending on what it is that you're avoiding, you're going to have a different response to this particular point. But for me, I feel that I avoid things that are tough. I avoid things that are tough but necessary. I avoid things that I'm scared of sometimes. And so really I'm giving this piece of advice, this particular tip, from a place of really feeling that I've been in that space before and I know how damaging it can be. And sometimes, you know, when you work up to biting the fucking bullet, you really feel like at least you've done that one self-loving thing for yourself that day, and it feels good. So what have you been avoiding? Can you tackle it, or at least partially tackle it, in the next 24 to 48 hours? Write it down. Get it done. Track your moods. Track your moods. If you feel like you are not really sure how the days are going, what kinds of different things are affecting your mood, how you're feeling a lot of the time, if you feel disconnected from yourself, tracking your moods can be really useful. You can do it once in the morning, once in the evening if you want to. You can make notes against how your mood has been, or you don't have to if you don't want to. But I think it's a good way to understand how the days have been and where you're coming from, and think about any necessary changes that might need to be made to up your mood. I think if you write a few bullet points or a little note next to each mood, especially if the mood is low, if you're feeling frustrated, anxious, sad, angry, or even numb, I think if you make a note next to those things when you're tracking your mood, it becomes quickly apparent why those moods might be happening, and you can actually see patterns and come to understand what it is that can put you into a better or more stable mood more of the time. So maybe if you recognize, for example, that you're always in a low mood when you have to do a certain thing, or when you don't see or you do see a certain person, you know, things like that can just give you a real inside track on what is happening for you, how you can elevate your mood more, how you might prepare more for things that do put you into a low mood, or even how to decrease or eliminate things that put you into a low mood. The 10th suggestion in my list of things that cost low money or no money is say no or say yes. I think that there are certain things that we want to say no to, that we refrain from saying no to because we feel like we're under pressure, we feel obligated, we feel like we are scared of the consequence of saying no, but we know that it would be good to say no for our self-love. We know it would be the self-loving thing to do, to turn something down, to decline an invitation, to say no to a favor that somebody keeps asking you, something like that. So if you know that saying no would be good, if you say no, if you know that saying no would be good for your self-love journey, do that. It costs nothing, and the price of not saying it, the price of refraining, could be very high for you emotionally and mentally and even physically. Or say yes. If you know that there's something you've been wanting to say yes to, open the door to, agree to, accept an invitation that you want to accept, an offer that you want to accept, say yes to it. You know, I think sometimes we also don't say yes to things because we're scared of opening that door. We're fearful of what might happen. We feel like we don't deserve it. We don't really know what the outcome of it will be, even though we're excited for it and we'd like to say yes to it. So whereabouts can you say yes and whereabouts can you say no in the situations where that's what you've been meaning to say, but you've been refraining? Now would be a good time to say that yes, say that no, whatever it is. And you might need to say one of each. Take naps. If you are a nap person, take a cat nap with some of your time off from whatever it is you need to do. For me, I love napping. I know not everybody loves napping. I would love to know down in the comments if there are any other serious nappers because I'm definitely a serious cat napper. I actually don't tend to sleep 8 hours a night on average. I tend to sleep 5 or 6 hours a night a lot of the time, but then I supplement with cat naps. Don't worry, sometimes I do sleep a solid 10 hours. It depends really what's going on. My sleeping pattern is not set. And one of the self-loving things for me about my journey was stopping worrying about it being set, because not everybody has that and not everybody needs to have that. People are different. But for me, supplementing with cat naps is a very self-loving thing to do. I also take a little nap sometimes when I've got something on my mind that's really churning over in my mind and it's harming me, it's upsetting me, I'm feeling very vexed about it. If I've got the time and the space to have a nap in the next couple of hours, I usually say to myself, I'm going to have a nap. And it might be a power nap. It might only be 15 minutes. I know some people say they can't nap because they end up napping for like 2 hours or something. And I get that. I get that that can be something that for not everybody is going to be good at. But for me, I find that sometimes remembering that I can have a little nap is a very heavenly, luxurious thing, and it costs me nothing. Suggestion number 12 is save a little bit of money. Put a little bit of money away somewhere. When I was going through serious hardship with money, obviously I didn't all the time have even so much as a pound coin to put away anywhere. Obviously, I really was on my arse. And if I had a pound coin, I'd be buying like bread with it or whatever. But there were other times where I made those frivolous purchases that I mentioned earlier, when I had a little bit of money from my benefit and I would do something silly with it, something that was needless, something that gave me a temporary lift. And actually, I could have saved that money. I could have put it away. I could have thought, okay, well, if I can afford to buy this magazine or whatever, I can afford to put that away. Now, like I said earlier, I don't judge anybody for making a fun purchase, a kind of like frivolous purchase, if you like, with a little bit of income that they have that is excess income technically, or to an extent. But I did find that when I set my mentality to the fact that it's valid to save £2 or £5, that was so helpful to me, because I never saw that as valid before. I never did. I always felt like if you were going to save money, it should be a big chunk of change. It shouldn't just be like pennies. That was silly to me in my mind. It was just silly. And that was actually a really unhelpful mindset that comes from my personal journey and my past with money. And I tackled that mindset, and it was helpful. I still sometimes do get that mindset. Sometimes I've only got £5 to put away for the month, and I think, oh, for God's sake, £5. I mean, what's that really? But I've trained myself to not think that way, and to think, no, £5 is £5 that I haven't spent, that I've put into savings, and that's really good. So sometimes you just have to look at a dollar or a pound coin and think, that pound coin, that dollar, that euro or whatever, that's going away. That's going away for a rainy day, or in some kind of fund for something I'm saving for, whatever it might be, because I can afford to do that. And otherwise it will just go on something that I actually don't need, and I would rather enjoy the feeling of putting it away. And I'm not like saving shaming anybody, okay? I'm not saying you should be saving however much you make, however much you have in your bank balance at any one time, whatever amount of benefit you're on. I'm not saying that. I know it's not right for everybody at this moment in time watching this video to have savings, but what I am saying is that my mentality around what actually constituted savings was really unhealthy. Like I said, I told myself that if it's not 50 quid or more, it's pointless and there's no point saving it. But actually it gave me a really good warm feeling to save it. I felt like I was putting it into the foundation of my financial stability in some way. And so it was good for me to make that mindset shift. So if you need to make that mindset shift and you're resonating with what I'm saying, put a little bit of money away. Even if you're telling yourself, oh, it's negligible, it's silly, why am I doing this? Maybe try and get past that if what I'm saying is making any sense to you. Start a collection of images that inspire you in some way, make you feel happy in some way, make you feel safe in some way. I took ages to get into Pinterest. Ages and ages and ages. I was very late to the Pinterest party, but I do have some Pinterest boards now. They're all private, by the way, guys. But I definitely will create a few public ones that I will be able to share with you as well. But I've got some Pinterest boards now. They've got sort of like different sort of style images on them, different forms of inspiration on there for different things, and it's really helped me. Pinterest is free, so use your Pinterest boards if you have a Pinterest account, or you can just save images from online into a Word document or into the notes on your phone kind of thing, or screenshot and have them in your album of screenshots on your phone. I think sometimes it can be really good to reference a collection of pictures that put you in a certain mood, remind you of a certain thing that makes you feel happy, or just kind of inspire you to get motivated in some way. So that's something that you can do that is cheap and cheerful, and that I think everybody watching this video pretty much has access to in one way or another online. Drink more water, drink more water, drink more water. Hydration for the nation. It is a good situation. Why do I have to rhyme? Yeah, drinking more water. You know what? When I don't drink water, my skin bleh, and my mood, bleh, dry mouth, get tired, I get worn down. And I recognise when I haven't been drinking water after a while. I get headaches as well, dehydration headaches. Certain things creep up on me and remind me that I need water. I think it's really good to start the day with a big glass of water. So if that's something that you're listening to and thinking, yeah, I could do with a bit more water in my daily routine, then turn that tap on and get that water. Number 15 on the list is enjoy some joint accountability. Sometimes it's really good if you're aiming for something, whatever it might be, to share that with someone else who's aiming for the same thing. Whether you do that in a Facebook group, whether you do that in your friendship group, you know, however it might be, whether you join a group in your area that's free to talk about things, a support group, for example. Just talk to that one friend, your partner, your family member, and say, I want accountability from you on this. I'm working on this. I'm trying for this. Can you check in with me on it regularly? And what can I check in on with you? What do you need accountability on? So it doesn't always need to be that you're holding each other accountable for the same things, but you can definitely lovingly hold each other accountable for something that you're both working on, even if those things are very different. Ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for some help. Ask for help from people around you that you've been scared to ask for help from. Go to a charity, a non-profit, something that is designed and set up to help you with whatever it is that is a struggle for you. Asking for help can be something that we forget is an option for us. It's also something that we can have quite a lot of fear around if we asked for help in the past and we felt like we ended up being pressured, or we felt like we were demeaned by the person that we asked for help from. It's definitely sometimes an emotional risk for people to ask for help, but I think we can stay silent and take things onto our shoulders for such a long time because we're afraid to ask for help. So if you know that you actually do need to reach out for some help, you need some assistance in some way, then please try to find a local charity or organisation that you can ask for help from. Apply for things, apply for benefits, apply for things that you know might help you if you are not receiving those things already. Call up your council, call up your appropriate government department to find out what is available for people with your situation. To open up to a friend or loved one, you know, go to a support group, whatever it is. Have a think about what it is that you need help with and think about how you can ask for that help if at all possible. If you feel like you're in that place where you are in readiness, even if it feels like it's a bit risky, a bit scary, how can you do that? Because it is a self-loving thing to do if you possibly can. Give yourself credit. Celebrate your fucking wins. Celebrate your wins, baby cakes. It is so important. Anything that you do on this list, celebrate the fact that you did it. Anything good you did for yourself that was hard, it was a hard decision for you to make, but you went ahead and you made that decision, give yourself credit. It is important to celebrate your wins. Write them down. You know, celebrate them by having a page in your journal where you write them down in your phone, talk to somebody in your life about them and ask that person what their wins have been during the week so you can celebrate them as well. Always make sure that when you hit a milestone or you do something good for yourself that was hard, but you went ahead and did it and you feel good for it, make sure that you place yourself in a position where you are popping a little party balloon for yourself. Not literally, you can do it literally if you want, but yeah, make sure you're recognizing that. Don't just let it go under the radar. Don't not celebrate it. It deserves your recognition. It deserves your attention. Put something out into the world. If this is something that you've been wanting to do, or it's something that you used to do but you've moved away from it, it's something you've always had a lot of nerves about but it really inspires you and it makes you feel fizzy to think of doing it, do it. Even if you just start by putting a considered comment underneath this video when you rarely if ever comment on anything, but you feel like you've got something to say about this, that is putting something out into the world. If you join a Facebook group and somebody asks a question and you can speak to that question, you can give solid advice on that, go ahead and give it. Give your point of view. Help somebody. Put something into the world by making a video. Put something into the world by putting your poetry on Instagram or on a blog or whatever. Go to your local poetry slam night and read a poem. You know, just put something out into the world, even if it's a compliment for somebody and you feel like you want to say how their work has touched you, or you know, you want to make them feel good about what they are producing. And that might be a start, even if you are still too scared to show what you have been producing. You could start by being more involved in any kind of community around the sort of stuff that you like to produce. Be seen. Show yourself, you know, show up in some way. Don't be afraid to let your voice be heard. That's the final thing that I would say that costs nothing apart from a little bit of heart racing and palm sweating. Okay, honey bunnies, this has been it for talking about self-love on a budget, the issues with that. There's so much more that I could have said, but I'm just hoping that this resource is useful and comforting. And I would love to get to read more about your stories, your experiences down in the comments. And much love and self-love. Blessed be Pop-Tarts.